welcome back to the latest episode of the Be Better podcast. A big thank you, as always, to our regular listeners, possibly both of you. No, we've got a few more than that. But no, thank you. I'm bumping into people who say, hey, I've listened to your podcast, and that's quite cool. As ever, if you like what we're putting out there, tell a friend, tell your mum, tell your dad, tell your brother, sister, uncle, auntie, I don't know, tell someone in the chip shop. And if you could give us a 5-star review on any platform of any kind, that would be greatly, greatly appreciated. Anyway, without further ado, with me today, I have got Gillian Boucher. Gillian, how are you?
I'm good, Tim. I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
I am doing all right. We're recording this on a Friday afternoon, so life can't be too bad.
That's right. That's right. And you nailed my name. Thank you.
Thankfully, because we tested it before we started. But yeah. Hey, we'll do the behind the scenes release of the podcast episode later on, perhaps. So, Gillian, for people who don't know who you are you and what you do?
My name is Gillian Boucher, and I am a sustainability advisor and co-founder of Orba shoes. And I am also a sustainability consultant for Morpham Environmental. And I'm based here on the beautiful Kapiti Coast, just north of Wellington, Waikanae Beach. It's a bit blustery today, but that's okay. It's been quite hot, so it's nice to cool down.
Nice. And we'll take whatever Mother Nature throws at us on any given day.
Absolutely.
So I'm sensing, well, people listening in will be sensing that maybe both of us have accents. So where are you from originally?
I am from a small little island called Cape Breton Island, which is part of the province of Nova Scotia in eastern Canada. So the island is attached to the mainland by a very, very small man-made causeway. Wow. And mostly populated by Scottish immigrants that came over through the Highland clearances as economic migrants, though I'd say they'd meet the criteria of refugees, to be honest.
Yeah, one man's refugee is another man's economic migrant. Yeah.
Yeah, about over the course of about 100 years, they came over to Cape Breton Island from the West Coast and Highlands and Islands of Scotland. So it's quite a predominantly Scottish culture. Yeah. I do have a French last name. Much to my grandfather's dismay, my mother married a Frenchman. He was very Scottish, my grandfather. And yeah, so I grew up surrounded by Scottish culture and music and dance and language. So it was a pretty interesting way to grow up.
Nice.
So yeah, that's where I'm originally from.
Did you learn any Gaelic or anything?
I did. I did. I had a pretty good grasp on the language by the time I was 12. Gaelic was my grandfather and my grandmother's first language.
Wow.
And they started just kind of using the language at home when they didn't want the kids to know what they were saying. So
that was the incentive to learn. I really want to know what they're talking about. I reckon that's probably why they did it. It's like, we'll talk this, and then the kids will want to know if we're talking about them, so that will incentivize them to learn. I quite like that as an idea, to get your kid to learn a language.
And as a result, and of course, a concerted effort on behalf of the Nova Scotia government, kids weren't allowed to speak anything other than English in school.
Yep.
So my grandparents on my father's side were French speakers, and my grandparents on my mother's side were Gaelic speakers, and I speak neither, which is a sad, just a sad reality for a lot of people.
You could have had both, and that would have been.
I could have had both. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
For those people who don't know their history, unlike people like myself with a degree in history, Scotland. it's funny because Scotland and France are actually quite an old alliance, because the common enemy was England. So there's historically strong links between Scotland and France, because they would occasionally sort of buddy up and go, look, you come from the south, we'll come from the north, we might get them, but never really successful. So there you go.
Yeah, there were definitely elements of that in Nova Scotia with the French settlers and the Scottish settlers, but not a lot of intermarriage between a lot of the Scottish settlers. I think they were just really aware of how strongly they wanted to hold on to their culture and their background and their roots. Yeah. And that still is pretty much the way today, for sure. When I go back, as a result, I did become a professional touring fiddle player.
As you do.
As you do. you know, I thought, yeah, everyone and their dog plays the fiddle from Cape Breton Island. So
Right.
yeah, I do
Yeah,
fit one of those
you
little
have to get
stereotypes.
you have to get out because there's too much competition locally.
Absolutely. My goodness. Yeah, it was an interesting way to grow up for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's cool. Yeah, I think yeah, just cool story, cool background. So
Yeah.
so how maybe we'll start there. So yeah, so how did you when did you leave Nova Scotia, Cape Breton Island? Like
As
what
soon
was
as
the
I could. Um,
when I was
no,
12.
kidding. So, sorry, mom. Sorry, mom. Um, well, actually, I was really fortunate because when I did pick up the fiddle, piano was my first instrument, and I was also a dancer. But when I did pick up the fiddle, it so happens I was pretty darn good at it, and it became a social passport. So I started traveling internationally when I was about 16, to do shows in America and teach and that sort of thing. And then moved over to the UK when I graduated from high school, went to Edinburgh University, to study biology, quit when I realized that I was having way more fun playing music in pubs and doing gigs and teaching. So, so I ended up living there for 3 years, just playing music and teaching and
Wow.
pouring pints and having a really great time. Yeah. And
That sounds a bit reminiscent
eventually,
of my university career. In my first term, I was playing rugby for the university, which I thought, wow, I should be proud of this. But Wednesdays was always the away games for sports, or sorry, every other Wednesday would be
right.
an away game, and so I was missing a tutorial on a Wednesday with one of the professors. So I went to the head of history. So I went to the history department. So I'm looking for a prof, whatever his name was, and the history department secretary said, oh, he doesn't have an office here because he works in like 3 or 4 different universities across South Wales. But what's it
Hmm.
about? Maybe I can help. I said, well, like I've missed some of his tutorials. I'm just trying to catch up. I just want to see what I've missed. And she was like, oh, I think you need to talk to the head of department. So next minute, I'm wheeled in front of the head of department. He's, well, so what's this? I hear you back. You're missing some tutorials. I said, well, yeah, I'm representing the university at rugby, sir. And he goes, well, I think you need to think about what's more important, playing rugby or your history degree. And I think it was the fact that I paused. Oh, I mean, my history degree, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you finished your degree,
At least I got
didn't
it.
you?
I got it. I got what they call in the UK is I got a 2-2. So it's either called a Desmond, as in Desmond Tutu, or a sportsman's degree. So it shows that
Oh, right.
because in the UK you either get a first, a 2-1, a 2-2, a third, I think it's a third or a pass. And a 2-1 is always like the silver medal in the Olympics. It's like you knew that if you pushed a bit harder, you possibly could have got a first. Whereas a 2-2 was like, I burnt that bridge on day one. I knew I was I knew that I was just gonna a 2-2 was like the solid degree that was like, yeah, you turned up to enough lectures, but you've clearly got some character and you were in some societies and you can drink a pint of beer. So
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I went back to university when I was 28, and I was definitely a bit more focused
yeah.
and driven. Yeah, definitely.
One of my
But
housemates
no,
at
New
uni
Zealand.
was an older student and he
Yeah,
worked
yeah.
he was doing economics and accounting, so shout out to Dave, and he worked like a dog because it's like, I have to get this degree for my job, whereas we're kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah, if I get it, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, being a slightly mature student was definitely helpful.
Mm,
That's for sure. But no, I ended up coming to New Zealand the first time for a music tour when I was about 20 and just kept coming back. Always loved New Zealand, but knew that I had to be closer to where the gigs were and where the money
right.
was. And it wasn't here. But that kind of changed about 10 years ago, where my gigs were becoming kind of more cohesive tours,
Mm,
a bit more structured. And I was doing that like 3 times a year. So I was able to finally say, okay, I can live in the place that I love and
nice.
just leave 3 times a year for
Yeah.
6 weeks at a time and make that work. So I made that work until pretty much until the borders closed
Yeah,
and I
that'll do
couldn't
it.
do it anymore.
Yeah.
That'll do it. That'll do it. Yeah. Yeah. So that was an interesting time. And so I kind of hung up my bow, and by then I had finished my master's in my second degree,
Yeah.
and I was ready to just kind of really focus on a new career. Yeah.
Mm. And so that's what led to Orba, I'm guessing, or was there something
That's what
before?
led to Orba. That's definitely what led to Orba. Um, Orba was a concept that was kind of floating around with another local entrepreneur here based in Kapiti. He had been over to Bali on business and was introduced to a man named Marshall Westlake, who was kind of considered the grandfather of the footwear industry in Indonesia. And his background, he's British, and he started his career with Clark's Footwear in the UK back in the day. And when he moved to Indonesia at that time, 30, 40 years ago, products and things were packaged in banana leaf. And there was minimal kind of plastic packaging kind of going around. And when plastic was introduced en masse, uh, people were just kind of tossing plastic the way they would banana leaf. And so he just saw this incredible rise in pollution. And he knew that he was part of an industry that was contributing to that pollution, whether it be through the manufacturing of petroleum-based rubbers in low-cost countries with very low environmental regulations, pollution of waterways and landfill at the end of life. And so he decided that he wanted to end his career or finish his career, or at least have something that he could be proud of, and that is to create the most sustainable footwear possible. But he needed people to kind of take the idea and run with it. And so yeah, it was an idea, and I was looking for something to kind of bite my teeth into. And because they wanted to, create something that could make really impressive environmental claims and needed to look at materials, needed to look at life cycle assessment of materials and compare them, and processes and supply chain. And shoes are still made in low cost countries. There's a lot of issues with that, especially with supply chain management. And then, of course, end of life. So yeah, it was the perfect project for me to kind of get stuck into, and I ended up being Orba's first full-time employee, actually
Wow.
back in
Number one.
2020. Yeah.
Super cool. It's funny how sometimes, yeah, life just throws up these chance encounters. But I guess it's a big part of it is having the courage, the curiosity to go, yeah. Because you could have quite easily gone, oh, I don't know, this is risky, or I've got bills to pay.
Mm.
Maybe I'll just go and get a job as a sustainability consultant or whatever. So it's quite. There's I don't know if do you know the Shakti mats. You've seen those?
Yeah.
Yeah. If people don't know what they are, it's like a mat that's got these little pin things on it, and you lie down on it, and it puts the blood flow
Like a
around your
nail
body.
bed.
Yeah, basically like a plastic nail bed. But I've met, because I think they're based in Christchurch, or they've got something down here, and the origin story of
Oh.
how that happened is very similar. Basically, the guy who now runs it was at some meditation retreat in India, and the guy who had who invented the Shakti mat was basically, he was like a millionaire or a billionaire. He's like, oh, I've got enough money, I don't need any more. I've got this idea, you can have it if you want, but just make sure you take it
Oh
out to the
wow.
world. And it's like, how cool is that? Like,
Wow.
I'm looking for my moment of some dude who goes, hey, I've got the idea, it's all here, you just need to go and do it. Maybe one day, I don't know. Although I quite like
Maybe
doing
one
it.
day.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
one day. Look, there's a lot of great ideas out there, but it's the having the ability to kind of take the ideas and make a plan and actually go for it. And I think that's where myself and my husband Scott, who's also involved in the company, that's where our strengths were. My strengths were in strategy, sustainability, and his strengths were in business growth.
nice.
So it was a really, really cool kind of intertwined and really great connection. And we haven't killed each other yet, and it's been quite a few years, but our work really complements each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's been really interesting, and yeah, really exciting actually.
Nice.
Very
Yeah,
exciting.
I tried working with my dad after university, and that was pretty clearly going to end in a murder suicide one way or the other. So We were just like, yeah, I think we'll just call it quits, and I'll go to New Zealand. Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah,
No, we've yeah,
I think it either works or it doesn't work. I don't think there's a middle ground. Like I think there's bad days maybe, but
yeah.
it'll either work or it won't work, and it's really clear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And absolutely. And now that I've really started working full time with Morpham, I've kind of stepped back a little bit from Orba. I've done a lot of their strategy and where they're going and what they're doing. We're just waiting for that next step of growth and
Yep.
bumping crossing over into international markets and start recruiting and so
Nice.
yeah. But also it wasn't that daunting for us to take on a new business or a new vision because we've been entrepreneurs our whole life, you know.
Mm.
I've always been a job maker. I self-managed, self-promoted, self-booked my music career completely. So yeah, I've always been quite independently driven.
Nice. Yeah, I think
Mm,
yeah, there's various schools and universities now that sort of teach entrepreneurism, but I kind of tend to feel fundamentally you're like you say, you're either a job maker or maybe a job doer, because it's not for the faint-hearted going out and giving something a go. And if you don't like an element of uncertainty in your life, or you're not at least capable of handling uncertainty and yeah, that extra level of stress, yeah,
definitely. And a lot of trial and error.
yeah,
And I think yeah, and I do take my hat off to Scott because he is just one of those powerhouse entrepreneurs. He is like he'll be an entrepreneur forever and he
mm.
just lives off the thrill of it. Whereas I'm like, I'm a little tired of this now. I just like a little security, please.
Yeah, I just like a paycheck. Yeah,
Yeah, so yeah, yeah, looking for something a little bit more structured
yeah,
at this
yeah.
time in my life,
That's
which I've
what you
found for
what you've
sure.
done. Yeah, yeah. So,
Mm,
so tell us a bit more about Orba. So, for people who haven't come across the amazing shoes that Orba makes, tell us a bit about why they're different and why they're so amazing, and then maybe if we can backfill a little bit about how you got the idea, you've got the sort of the product mix for making them, but how did you go about making the first pair of shoes, and did they work? I suppose would be a supplementary question to that. There's quite a few questions there, but
Looking into materials, so by the time we met Greg and Marshall, they had been researching materials for 4 years, pretty much, looking for materials to replace all of the different components that go into footwear. There's a really cool photo on the Orba website, actually. I think it's on the materials page. And it's basically where we've kind of deconstructed the entire shoe. And you can
mm,
see, like, there's um, toe puffs and heel stiffeners, and there's all sorts of little bits in shoes that if you take them apart, you'd be like, wow, I didn't know that there were so many components. A lot of these components are made out of
mm,
um, plastic or synthetics, and we had to figure out how to replace every single component with a material that could meet the number one criteria. It had to be compostable, basically. It
mm.
had to be biodegradable and compostable. It had to be completely non-toxic, non-polluting, not made out of synthetics and not made out of petroleum-based rubbers and plastics. So that created a real problem trying to find suppliers who, first of all, suppliers would be like, why? Why do you
Yeah,
want a heel stiffener made out of plant-based fabric? We're like, because we're on
because
this
you,
mission. And
because you're the ones who shit and destroy the planet. Hello.
we're on this mission. I know. It's such a funny thing. You never really think about shoes as being polluting. We never really
Mm,
think about the things that we absolutely really need. They're such a
mm,
necessity. And so we just buy what's available to us. And so shifting this kind of paradigm on, wait a second, I think we can probably address some of this because they are made out of pretty nasty stuff. And it's the petroleum based rubber that really drives me crazy because we don't even know how long that stuff's going to be around for
mm.
because the first piece of petroleum made rubber is still out there. and sitting in landfill somewhere. So um, even trying to figure out how to make a sole that didn't have any petroleum-based rubber in it was R&D and trial and error for years. And finding it's been a huge science experiment. But in 2021, we released the first Orba Ghost. We had figured it out, and we released Orba, and it was such a celebration, being able to kind of figure out how to replace all of these components. So our next goal is to really kind of solidify the process for end of life. Now, when I talk about the materials, it wasn't just the materials that were really important to us. A lot of materials were coming also from low-cost countries, a lot of manufacturing in low-cost countries. So our supply chain management was, again, another entity that we felt really, really strongly about. And transparency, knowing who's making our shoes, knowing what kind of working conditions they're in, knowing that labor laws are being adhered to. So that was a whole other element of the process of Orba. Always having purpose, even before, and this was before I even knew what B Corp was. All of these elements to us covered our bases for true sustainability when it comes to product manufacturing. And I got to implement all of this stuff because I was the first employee. So we were a small team, and whenever I had a suggestion, everyone just agreed. And it was that level of commitment to doing the right thing made it just pretty streamlined. It was pretty fantastic, pretty fantastic. So a lot of supply chain management, and even running training programs for some of our suppliers. Our hand woven flax canvas, hand woven by some beautiful women in Ubud in Bali. And we just saw that there were a couple of things they really wanted to grow in a sustainable way. They were really committed to that. But there were just a few little things that were kind of like, oh, you could use the schedule, for sweeping the floors and like better working hours and kind of that sort of commitment. And so we found some training programs, SCORE training programs run by the ILO, and engaged with them. And we paid for training for 2 facilities in Bali before we even sold a shoe. We were committed to funding training programs to help our suppliers kind of, grow in a more sustainable way with us. And now we're, looking at processes for the most efficient way of getting these shoes to break down and in a natural environment. So compostability is our end goal. We were actually just visiting a facility today, looking at shredding the shoes into 2-centimeter pieces and putting them through a process to create soil that can be tested to make sure that it meets all the standards for soil compostability. Yeah, lots of exciting things.
Nice. So much. It's
There's so much.
There's so much. But I think when I first came across Orba, I was just like, this is so cool. Because I guess there is another globally well-known shoe brand that is a B Corp that is a bit of a darling, perhaps, to a lot of people. The old, am I allowed to mention the word, or do you get all shaky?
Of course, absolutely. All
birds.
Who's going to say it first?
Yeah, it's like Macbeth in for actors. Don't say the M word. Because I had Allbirds before I had Orbas. And you kind of go, wow, like this is really cool. Like they're a B Corp brand, and they've got cool materials, natural materials. But where they perhaps, I personally don't believe that their shoe is as sustainable or as biodegradable as your shoe. And so when I saw the Orbas come along, I was like, wow, this is like a seriously cool piece of kit. And I think you are up there with, for a first time, a first-time B Corp, high-scoring B Corp that's just absolutely nailing a problem. It's like, go you. Because my kind of test with a B Corp is, can you throw rocks at them? Can you look at them and go, yeah, look, you've done well here, but, and I think that's where I go with Allbirds. I kind of go, yeah, look, the shoes are good, but they wear out really quickly, and the upper hasn't worn out, and I just want to replace the bottom, but I can't do that, and I have to put your shoes in the bin, and there's a bunch of stuff in there that's maybe not going to be so good for the planet. Whereas you've kind of like almost gone to I think it's the key for what you've done is like you've actually gone, how do we solve this problem, rather than, I kind of almost feel like Allbirds have gone, how do we make a slightly better, more ethical trainer? Whereas you've gone, no, how do we create a shoe that you could possibly, you know, put a couple of flowers in it, and it could turn into a plant pot in your garden for a bit. You know what I mean?
That's such a good idea.
I gave that to David yesterday. I did some for people listening. I was part of some sort of consumer brand testing for Orba yesterday, and we're not sure how I got on the list, but anyway, one of my ideas was like, you guys should create like a list of 100 ideas for your old Orbas, and one of them could be like, you stick them on the wall upside down, and you put some, you know, little indoor plants in them. If I might do that with my next pair that wear out, I'll test it for you. I'll nail them to the wall behind me.
You
put some little
send us
plants in
photos.
them.
That is just, I think that's such a good idea. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'll have to make a note of that for
you've got plenty of time.
Team.
You've got plenty of time before this episode gets launched to get that implemented. So don't worry. So people in the future, if you see Orbas hanging on walls with flowers coming in, you know that it was launched here today.
Amazing. I think what Allbirds did though, and kudos to them, and they've put an awful lot of work into materials innovation. They started the conversation.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like started the conversation, you know, and as soon as you start the conversation, then you can start thinking about, okay, well, if that's possible, maybe the next step up is possible. There's a really good benchmark. Let's raise it, you know.
Yeah. I've used the same analogy about 4 times this week. It's like when Roger Bannister ran the first minute mile. You know, it's like as soon as he did it, about 20 people did it the week after, because suddenly people realized it was possible. And
it was
possible. I think that's what a lot of cool B Corps like yourselves are doing. It's like, actually, it can be done. It just comes down to thinking differently and choosing being more intentional around the design of a product. Because like every shoe is designed the same way, because the system has been designed around putting plastic and petrochemical materials into it. Because that's the system and everyone's geared up to do it. So when you were going to these suppliers and sort of saying, hey, we want to make a shoe out of this material, in general, once they got over the shock and the kind of like, this woman's got rocks on her head, were they then receptive to the idea? Were they kind of like, okay, yeah, this is cool, this is a challenge, like, okay, we want in on it? Or were they still just kind of like, sure, we'll sell you this stuff, but don't come crying to us when the shoes are falling apart?
A lot of them were pretty cool, because they were like, ooh, premium product, we can make way more money from these guys.
Dollar bills, y'all, dollar bills.
You know, like, geez, I think there's a tiny little I think our organic cotton labels are shipped from Italy. My goodness, you know, they cost so much money. But yeah, once we found the right suppliers and they kind of got what we were doing, and some of them had already joined the movement, and they were like, yeah, we've got this, like this. It's plastic, but it's a bioplastic, so it's actually not petroleum-based plastic. It's made from organic matter, and it's met kind of compostability standards. So it just took a long time to find them, but they were out there. The most difficult part of the shoe, I think, was the composition of the sole, and it's still going through iterations. And in fact, I think we've only really reached our final iteration just within the last month. So working with organic and inorganic kind of matter within the compound determines how quickly it will decompose and will kind of biodegrade in the right environment. So we've been playing around with the recipe to try and find the right one and stay fit for purpose, because you can have something as sustainable as you want, made out of the most amazing materials and great supply chain and all that, but you know, if you can't wear them, then we're just wasting time and money and resources. And one of the biggest compliments we get, apart from our kind of sustainability efforts, is how comfortable they are, and that's cool. That's really cool. So we know they're fit for purpose.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
we've made these shoes out of biodegradable jelly. They're good for approximately 7 seconds before they will just completely obliterate. But hey, it's a win for the
Yeah.
planet. Yeah.
And well, we do get that. We do, especially in the beginning, but it seems to kind of, we're not getting the question so often now, but in the beginning, people are like, what? Shoes made out of biodegradable, compostable materials, will they fall apart when you're wearing them? And I'm like, does your linen shirt fall apart when you wear it to the beach?
Yeah.
No. So that's just not really how it works. So there's been so much opportunity for education as well.
Yeah.
And how to how to get the messages across, our key messages, because it is such a different,
Yeah.
it's such a different product. It's such a different process. As you can see, we're doing a lot of work in that space with the guy who we were speaking with yesterday.
Yeah. And I think
Who's doing some work in that space.
yeah, he's doing some really cool stuff. He should totally be a B Corp as well. I feel, but that's a different conversation.
Ooh, good thinking.
I think it's that classic kind of Peter Thiel 0 to 1, isn't it? You know, you're creating a market, and so you know you are the first big mover in this kind of thing, and so there's going to be an expense in educating and people being skeptical, and but I guess it's that adoption curve. You've got the people like me who are early, like I'm actively looking to buy my clothing that is B Corp. You know, this is a B Corp t-shirt,
Yeah.
B Corp pair of shorts on.
Yeah.
I haven't really found a decent B Corp sock company yet. So if Orba, well, I mean, Allbirds sell some socks, but they wore out really, really quickly. So I'm still looking for like a really good pair of socks to complement my range. But you know, I'm probably on the extreme end of that adoption curve. Of if it's a B Corp, I'm going to buy it because I'm that B Corp bloke, so I kind of have to. But I obviously genuinely believe in it, and so I think, yeah, you're creating the new thing, and that's expensive. But the opportunity is that once you have convinced everyone and people, I think I'm on my second or third pair of Orbas now, and I'm like, well, that's me done. I don't need to think about looking at any other shoe brands because I'm just going to buy Orba. And so I think it's going to take time, but you'll get there because people are going to connect into it and go, yeah, I'm in.
Yep. And when shoe companies start, demanding more kind of ethical materials and healthier materials to make their products from, then the cost for supplying them does go down. And that's just economics. So yeah, I mean, it's been a bit of a labor of love and a rather expensive project, but look, we're still really, really passionate about it and really excited about it. Yeah, and looking at some exciting things in the future for sure.
Nice. So currently selling in New Zealand, but globally as well currently, or just New Zealand?
Still testing here. We're coming out with some colors. New Zealand is an awesome market for testing products. It's got the right population size. It's easy to communicate with. And so even though economically it's a little bit of a struggle staying in one market, because we're using materials and processes that haven't been used in the footwear industry before, we kind of have to go through quite a rigorous process of testing them and testing out new dyeing methods, because of course we're not going to be using toxic dyes. We're using plant-based dyes. In Bali, there's traditional dyeing methods that use about 5 different plants, and they can create 200 different colors. It's quite amazing, and they're absolutely beautiful. And so yeah, looking at a range of colors and having to test out how best to dye the fabric and the upper. So currently doing that. So it takes a long time. It takes a long time. It's not a fast throw it together kind of process.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
Yeah. We did make it easier for ourselves, Tim.
Well, where's the fun in that? You know, that's that good Scottish. That's that good Scottish Presbyterian self-flagellation. No, it must be hard. Give me more winter. Give me driving hail and snow.
Actually, it's all the Scottish Catholics moved to Cape Breton Island, so it's even a bit worse. But
even more. Give me and more guilt. I need guilt as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
But I mean, if anything, anything worth doing is typically hard. So it's when you're in the middle of it. It's that whole, what's it, Winston Churchill, the hour is darkest just before dawn. It feels like it's a nightmare. It's struggle street. But I think you'll look back in 3 to 5 years time when you're smashing it in America and Europe, and you'll be like, What were we worried about? Yeah, you
Yeah.
know, ah, look at us now, emperors of shoes globally.
Why did I have a mental breakdown that day?
Yeah,
That doesn't make sense.
just that one day. I have them most days.
No. Yeah. And also I think because we take such great care in our processes, in our material selection, like we leave no stone unturned, as you say, like we're a pretty impenetrable B Corp in that regard.
Mm,
It does create such a solid foundation for growth.
yeah.
And yeah, so definitely I think that's really, really important. Taking the time, taking the care, taking the patience to really create a really strong foundation
Mm,
to grow on for
yeah,
sure. Mm.
totally. So when did B Corp pop up on the radar for you guys? Had you heard of B Corp before being involved with Orba, or was it part of the journey of part of your learning, or yeah?
I don't think so. My degree in sustainable development was more about environmental management and sustainable procurement practices, and so it's a bit more kind of sciencey and development projects and environmental based projects, not so much product
Mm,
based. So this was a little bit of a leap for me working in the product space, but not so much. I could still take all of the tools that I had learned and kind of um, apply them appropriately. I think B Corp first came on my radar probably when I was looking at who else is working in this space. And Allbirds came up, Veja came up, and then I was like, what is this little bee in a circle business? And just looked into it and I was like, whoa, this is a big movement. There wasn't really a lot of buzz about it here, and because that would have been about 4 years ago. And but there certainly seemed to be quite a buzz about it in North America, in Europe, and it just looked like such a great way to benchmark our practices, and a great way to put a stamp of approval on what I knew that we were doing really, really well. You know, it was great to go through the process of measuring it, measuring our impact and advertising our impact and joining a community. Cool organizations. Like it's the cool kids. B Corps are the cool kids.
I agree. Um,
I like to be cool.
yeah. um, yeah. That's no, that's yeah. I agree. It's cool. And that's interesting. Yeah, that you sort of just could see that it was a movement that you wanted to be a part of. Um, was there, having gone through the assessment, were there parts of the assessment, or yeah, were there any sort of surprises? Were there things that you were like, oh, hang on a minute, why haven't they asked us about this? Because we've just spent, $1 billion of R&D trying to make our shoe do this really well, and this system doesn't care about it, or what was there that you were like, yeah, this is pretty easy. We know, I guess, well, yeah, was the assessment a relatively easy one? Because you're like, yeah, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. And then were there any outliers where you're kind of like, okay, no, we hadn't thought about that. Now we need to go back and think about that.
You're stretching my memory a bit because it was I'm
Sorry,
gonna say it was about two and a
just
half, maybe 3 years ago when I went through the
just
B
make it
impact
up.
assessment. I'll make it up and then you can
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong because it might have been in there. I don't know. But maybe because we put so much energy into materials that had end of life responsibility for end of life, I'm wondering if there was enough covered on that in the B impact assessment. But look, it was rigorous, it was thorough, it covered some really, really awesome stuff that I didn't even think about really. So in that way, it was beneficial too. It was like, oh, wow, oh, we could be doing that quite easily. Um, did I find the process challenging? Not really, because a lot of the criteria that B Corp was looking for as an educated sustainability professional, I had implemented with Orba from day dot. And because we were a small organization, um, it didn't involve moving things around and it didn't involve changing anything. We could just kind of develop in the way that I could see that we needed to develop. And so we basically met a lot of the criteria that Orba was looking for. There was some governance structure stuff that we were kind of doing but not documenting. and a few things like that. So the documentation and providing evidence, but it really gave us an opportunity to get organized. And again, because we were small, that wasn't super challenging. It gave us an opportunity to get organized from day one in a way that we kind of knew we should be organized. So yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you're a really good example of a high scoring B Corp where, from like you say, from day one, the intent has been about a specific impact, and that's not every B Corp. Not every B Corp has got a. There's a good mate of mine, Tim O'Brien. He has been a previous podcast guest, and he wrote a LinkedIn post a while ago talking about how purpose statements are dead. Long live the impact statement. And initially, I kind of saw his post and I was like, I'm not really vibing with what you're saying here, because I think purpose is still really important. But we had a back and forth over email, and then we sort of discussed it more at length on the podcast episode. And I totally get what he's saying now. What he's saying is that, because the risk is a lot of purpose statements are done by the marketing teams. Wow, look at us, aren't we amazing? But actually, are you making an impact? And you can a cigarette company could create a purpose statement, because there is a potential benefit to smoking cigarettes. It's good for reducing anxiety. It's good for weight loss. It's good for sociability, if you want to meet other people who are smoking. So you can actually craft a purpose statement around why smoking is good. But the key is actually the impact. Okay, so the more you do of this, actually, yes, there's some benefits around social anxiety, weight loss, but you're probably also going to die of cancer. So doing like the impact and outcome measurement would then help you redefine that purpose piece. And I think you're what you've done at Orba is a great example of impact led. It's like I said, we are solving a problem from day one, whereas there's many B Corps who meet the criteria, who we are a better business, but we're not really focused on solving a specific, which is where the impact business models come to play. And I just think you're a great example where we had a real deep change that we're trying to make from day one, and we're going to build a business around it. So your type of business is the one that typically sails through B Corp, because from day one you've gone, we're kind of doing this, as opposed to, like you say, look, we want to do more good, but we haven't really been thinking about it in that way, so we're going to have to put a lot of changes in the business to get us to that point. So kudos to you guys for doing it from day one.
Yeah, and well, thank you very much. But I think it's the visionaries at the very beginning of Orba who wanted to do good to begin with. Being a business for good and having positive impact was just the crux of it. And then we realized that there was actually like an organization out there that would recognize that. B Corp.
Give me pats on backs.
Yeah. So actually, it was really quite enjoyable going through the assessment phase. And as B Corp has grown, it's just so proud to be B Corp, so proud to be part of the community. And we have collaborated with so many other B Corps. And it's got that, like, it's a community. There's just help and encouragement and sharing of ideas and sharing of thinking. There's not this competitive kind of vibe whatsoever. Let's share our followers, let's share our products, let's share this and share our good times. It's been really cool collaborating with some awesome B Corps out there in New Zealand. Yeah.
Nice. And I mean, hopefully that will be a springboard for you into the rest of the world, is to connect in through the B Corp networks. And,
definitely. Definitely.
So it doesn't surprise me that you sort of breeze through B Corp. Yeah. High achiever since day one.
High achiever, but I think look, also these guys we were all pretty lucky that I was in the middle of studying a master's in sustainable development,
lucky, or was it meant to be?
Maybe it was meant to be. Those stars aligned, and there are a lot of businesses and a lot of organizations out there that really want to be impactful and be better, and just don't really have the knowledge skill set to kind of know where to begin or what to do or how to create their own roadmap based on their activities and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so I think Orba was quite fortunate there as well.
And I think that's where I find B Corp is a useful tool for that, because a lot of people, I don't know where to start, and they think, oh, B Corp
Definitely.
is this it's this unattainable, like, sacred cow. We'll never be a B Corp. But actually, just have a go. Look at the framework and then start working towards it, or get some help
You
to
don't
help you
have
get
to,
towards it. It's
yeah, I mean, you don't have to pay to register and have a look at the B impact assessment and look at the criteria and get your thinking cap on and be like, oh, that's criteria for environment, that's criteria for community. We could start thinking about these things so it's a great tool to go in and have a look around and kind of start mapping out what are areas that you could improve for your business. Yeah,
100%.
a great tool.
Yeah. So talking of which, so you, like you said, you've kind of reduced your time currently at Orba. I think when we last chatted, you were sort of, you've done a lot there. So let's,
Yeah.
chapeau, as the French would say. So what are you up to now? You're still hanging out with Orba, obviously, because you're deeply connected to the organization on a familial level, as well as others. But yeah, what are you up to currently? You're working in the sort of world of sustainability.
Yep, absolutely. So back in August, I joined the team at Morpham Environmental in their Wellington office, which has been absolutely fantastic. Morpham is a super cool organization, potentially B Corp material. And a lot of Morpham team are based up in Auckland. So you've got a bit of a smaller team down here in Wellington. And just fantastic group of water engineers, ecologists, wetland management projects, just really, really super cool. Super cool stuff. And so I joined their sustainability team in August to help grow kind of our service offering, how we want to go about it, what does it look like for Morpham. Sustainability underpins everything that Morpham does within, doing good and seeing positive impact from projects. So I say sustainability team. I consider everybody at Morpham to be part of the sustainability team. But yeah, so it's just been a bit of a great last 5.5 months of kind of developing sustainability strategy for Morpham and consulting services.
Nice. And so are we going to see, because of all this water ecology work you're doing, is Orba suddenly going to make a range of Wellington boots
Hey, look, I think because this rubber, the rubber sole is so groundbreaking, as soon as we get some really solid compostability stats out there and how long, like what the exact process is and how long it's going to take, the use for that type of rubber is endless because it is a bio rubber. It doesn't have any chemicals in it. So that will be interesting. But there you go. But what we are looking forward to is I noticed that, there's a lot of environmental criteria in the B impact assessment. And some of that stuff, organizations and businesses might not really have a clue how to go about preparing metrics on their environmental performance. Yep. And so that's definitely something that we offer at Morpham, helping businesses kind of go through and be like, well, let's create environmental policy. What are your environmental objectives? Yep. What are your impacts? How can we address your impacts? How big is your organization? And do you have lots of environmental impacts throughout your value chain? Is an environmental management system something that could be looked at? So all of those cool kind of environmental sustainability geeky stuff that I love.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say first time round, most of our clients, they get to the environmental stuff and most people are, I'd say most people have companies of a decent size have possibly engaged an organization to do some carbon work. But when it comes to water consumption, waste management, energy use, they're like, yeah. And I think the thing that's tough is for, a large number of companies, they're maybe in a shared office. or they might rent one floor of a tower block, and the landlord, they're not spitting out the data on an individual level. So it's interesting to see what you see, but whether there's going to be more pressure on landlords and building owners to be able to go, actually, I do need to be able to say, more of them are using this amount of water, because they want to know what they're using. I think that this is the two areas that we see that most people need help on are the environmental side of things, and then supply chain. And within that, environmental impact of their supply chain, because if you have got a product, and it, well, as you will know with Orba, what's the impact on biodiversity of your supply chain? What's the impact, environmental impact or waste impact of your supply chain? And most people
absolutely
are like, I buy all our stuff off a guy called Dave in Auckland, and he seems like a really nice guy, but I don't know where he sources all the stuff from.
Exactly.
We'll go and talk to Dave and see what Dave knows. Yeah.
And you can't manage what you don't measure. And so impact assessments, environmental impact assessments, sustainability assessments, supply chain assessments. So yeah, there's definitely growing acknowledgement of its importance and growing demand. And look, there's a lot of quick wins too, because it doesn't have to sound too daunting. A lot of quick wins in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely going to be a bit more pressure on aspiring B Corps when the new BIA standards come out, for sure. I assume there's new mandatory minimums within the environmental criteria.
Yep.
Which is a great thing. It's really good. Mandatory minimums across the board.
I've got
to be a really truly sustainable business. Yeah.
Part of a focus group for the update of the standards, and I need to actually go and read in a bit more depth about the updated standards, but my understanding is certainly one of them under the environmental is circularity will be a minimum requirement. So
wow.
So some of it is going to be really stepped up. It's interesting. I'm still on the fence a little bit about the updated requirements. I know that they want to keep B Corp as a rigorous tool, but I keep coming back to the fact we're sitting at 0.01% of companies globally are currently certified B Corp. So are we going to raise the bar too high and make it unachievable for too many people? I don't know. I mean, it's way above my pay grade, but my kind of gut feel is that there's a middle ground of companies who could squeak in as a B Corp. They get the benefit of that. They recognize that doing good is good for them and their business and their stakeholders, which then means they want to go further down the journey. As opposed to now, it might just be like, well, there's no point trying because that's just too hard. Or will the psychology be, and maybe this is where David from Hardwired can tell us, is the psychology going to be, wow, this is a challenge. We're going to step up and we will meet that bar. Don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. That's a interesting stat. Did you say 0.01?
It's about 0.0. So there's about just under 8,000 B Corps globally. And on a Google search that I've done, there's about 500,000 businesses in New Zealand. And whatever the total number was, it's about 0.01% of the global for-profit business community. I mean, and that's probably not including some countries where there's no data on how many limited businesses are there in, I don't know, Burkina Faso. I doubt there's a register for that, possibly. There's going to be a whole bunch of areas of the world that just don't have a company register of every limited company, maybe. So it's possibly less than that, but it's we're not even at 1%. And my fear is we ratchet this up too hard and people just go, it's not worth it. It's great if we can get it, we might get some benefits, but the challenge of getting it is going to be overwhelming for us, so we just won't bother. And that's my fear, but I'll know more next week having been in the focus group. So
and for developing economies, business growth in developing economies that would never be able to achieve something like B Corp status. It's almost like we have to have tiers of B Corp based on region and socioeconomic.
I mean, there is to a degree. So there's kind of two assessments that you take currently based on developing versus developed. So, and that does take some factors into consideration. But it's gonna be interesting. I think the heart's in the right place. Like, we need to make this sure,
definitely
make sure it's robust. But let's not lose, like I say, it's like when back in the 90s when the Labour government under Tony Blair was trying to get elected. I remember it was one of those sort of phrases just stuck in your mind. They talked about in the media how it was the battle for white van man, like the typical bloke who's a tradie who drives a white van. He that was the swing voter that both parties needed to appeal to, and I kind of feel like that's what we're at risk at losing, is that swing voter white van man who's like, yeah, I could be convinced that I need to do better in my business around social and environmental, but if it's too hard for me to start doing it, then I'll wait another 2 years. Whereas I think at the minute B Corp it's a hard bar. Like, you look at the number of people that don't pass it.
It totally is. It's
but
robust.
It's achievable if you do the work to get what you need to do. So it's like at the minute, I kind of think it's at a pretty good level where some people still don't make the cut, but you can do it if you make the changes.
Look, I know this space. I know the sustainability space, and I thought the process was rigorous and the criteria was great, and not too much need for improvement, to be fair. So I was a bit surprised to see that these new standards were coming in. So it will be interesting to see how that all kind of pans out. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to see more B Corps. And I think what's going to really push the movement is whether it's consumer driven. And when consumers start absolutely demanding that they only want to buy from B Corp. And, you know, look, if it's not a robust program, and I have heard a couple of times from people, oh, that B Corp stuff, I don't know if it's I don't know if their bar is high enough. You know, it sounds like a lot of organizations can just get in and not do the mahi. And I'm like, no, I've been through the process. It's pretty rigorous. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I just want to see it grow. And so hopefully incredibly stringent standards and criteria don't inhibit that.
Yeah,
that's all I can hope.
Yeah, because it's a fine line, I think, between you know, scaling the movement. We used to have this conversation when I was hanging out with the team at what is now Kogo but used to be called Conscious Consumers. It's like, you know, what if we got McDonald's on the platform? If we could change McDonald's by 0.5% in terms of how they perform socially and environmentally, the impact that would have versus Gillian's, you know, gourmet juice store, who's absolutely maxed out but can only sell 10 juices a day. Like, both is having an impact, but you can move the dial, and I think that for me is the key, is moving the meta dial more than the micro dial of little small startups doing their thing. Like, we need them, but it's like we also need to change it at that big level. And I just recorded another podcast earlier on today where Mike from Brightly was saying about how, you know, he kind of connected to B Corp because Patagonia. You sort of go, well, this is the thing, like we need more brands. And I think Orba is going to be one of those brands that people connect to it because maybe they just, I mean, like I say, it's a great looking shoe. It performs well. So people are going to recommend it. I recommend it to everyone. And if people say to me, oh, those are cool shoes. What are they? Oh, and then they go, they're Orbas. They're like the most sustainable shoe. They're a B Corp. They're amazing. Da, 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 da. So I think you will be ultimately part of that global mix of companies that's telling a really cool story that people connect to, and then they go, okay, B Corp, yeah, I get it. Okay, where else are the big? Oh, that peanut butter in my fridge has got that little B in the circle.
Yeah.
Oh, and my bank's got a B with this. Okay, I'm connecting some dots here. So I just kind of think, I think my personal opinion is, I think it's robust enough, and I think if we put it into overdrive now and got more, even if we got to 5% of the global business community as a B Corp, you'd then have enough interest and people would go, okay, yeah, let's actually take it further. That's my theory. I don't know. Willing to be proven wrong.
It sounds like a sensible theory, and I would tend to agree.
Well, I'll see if I get a chance to pipe up on my focus group, and whether I get shot down or not. I'll let you know. If there's no more podcasts after this one, then people will know.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, what's sort of coming down the line at Orba? Have you got any insights as to what's happening there?
Colors.
Yeah,
colors using non-toxic plant-based dyes. Colors are next for Orba. Little bit more testing on quality control. COVID definitely impacted some quality control issues at the factories in Indonesia. So tightening that up, literally tightening up the weaves of the uppers. Yeah, kind of just fine tweaking and getting some investment to put into expansion in range and then expansion in market.
Yep.
So
Nice.
overseas, yeah, working on that.
And you may or may not be able to divulge, but are you looking at like crowdfunding as an option, or just looking for institutional, or possibly a bit of everything?
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. Oh my goodness, there is a Pledge Me campaign happening right now. It's been about 2 weeks. It's been running for about 2 weeks. And that is to bring the black Orba ghost to the market.
To life.
So, yeah, asking for a dollar deposit from all of our Orba fans who want a black ghost, and that lets us know how many we manufacture.
Yep.
So we don't run into overdrive of manufacturing and contribute to waste. So it's a bit of a kind of exploring this kind of system
Yep.
to see how that could potentially work in the future.
Nice.
Yeah, we see it as kind of building efficiency into our manufacturing.
Nice.
So head on
Very,
over
very
to
sort of
Orba and pledge
Tesla-esque.
me. Yeah, actually, yes, indeed. Yeah, it's an interesting model, and
Mm.
hopefully we'll win. Yep,
I have no
yep,
doubt you'll win. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how you go in the more, in the broader investment world, because all the evidence we see from reports and some anecdotally is that investors are increasingly wanting to put their money behind innovative brands that are solving a problem. So
yeah,
maybe we need to
definitely.
do an update when you've got all your cash, and you can tell us how it went.
Lots of growth in impact investment funds, lots of growth in impact investment, and a lot of criteria. And a lot of these impact investors, they're very stringent
Yeah.
and they like seeing B Corp, you know? Sometimes that's top of their list. And so, yes, a lot of growth in impact investment funds.
And even locally with the banks, you look at Kiwi Bank, BNZ, ANZ have all got
Yeah,
small to medium business loans in the market. That if and certainly with Kiwi Bank, if you're a B Corp, you get a better interest rate on your loan. So the lights are on and burning brightly in the investment community. And for me, that's that was always a signal. When the money people get it, you know that this shit's real.
absolutely. It was an awesome signal. It was a fantastic signal. Yeah, if the money people get it, well, they haven't poked holes in it. So
Yeah,
no, yeah,
they
it's
must be doing it right.
it's definitely a signal. Definitely a signal. I know. Yay.
And any
Yeah.
areas of sort of impact improvement that Orba's looking at, or do you feel like you're pretty maxed out on the good that you're doing?
It's going to depend on growth. It's definitely going to depend on growth. And so right now we're kind of at this little bit of a stage where there's manageable growth. We're still in one market. So everything that we've kind of implemented, it's easy to track. Our supply chain hasn't changed. It hasn't grown. Um, and I think yeah, when we start incurring exponential growth, praying for exponential growth, then it's going to be staying on top of that and
Yeah,
managing growth for sure
nice.
in a sustainable way. So, but we have the foundations in place and the systems in place to manage that and to track that. And so,
Nice.
yeah, feeling pretty safe with that, I
Nice.
think.
And I
Yeah.
think that's the key, is having that
Mm,
sustainable platform to be able to build on, and not because it's that balance between sort of purpose and profit, or revenue and impact. There's no point having a really big flash in the pan of impact and then you guys fall over. It's you've got to kind of build the two so that you can have that long-term positive
yeah,
contribution, rather than overwhelming your supply chain by saying,
absolutely.
hey, we've just got a million orders in the US, and then they have to compromise. You have a poor quality product, it fails, clients are like, these shoes are rubbish, not buying those again. And then
Yeah,
the potential for the impact that you had is completely gone. Yeah, so the
yeah,
joys of a
yeah.
startup in the for
The
purpose
joys of a
world.
startup, the joys of a startup, and also running compostability trials. Yeah, and we finally got some more fun because they're expensive too. I mean, all this testing that we're doing to meet our claims and find the exact end of life solution for Orbas, it's not cheap, and it takes time. You can't compost something in 24 hours.
Yep.
So yeah, next on the testing agenda is worm farm for
Nice.
sure. So working on that, and yeah, different processes. Thankfully, thankfully, it's kind of a scene that's growing. Waste management is definitely a little behind in that kind of regard when it comes to, consumers are wanting these products that are compostable and biodegradable and meet all these claims, but where the heck do they go at the end of the day? They go in the rubbish. And then they don't do what they're supposed to do, because
Yep.
landfill just isn't the environment that decomposes
Yep.
products and materials. So yeah, a lot of education and a lot of infrastructure still needed in that waste space for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely feels like that's the next frontier. It's
Mm.
you look at
Yeah.
all the packaging. Yeah, it's biodegradable, compostable, and then yeah, but it's still microplastic, and
Not,
it's not really compostable. And is
and
it compostable in New
who's
Zealand
gonna
and
do
in
it?
Finland? Yeah. So yeah, that's. But I guess yeah, people we try.
Yeah.
There's I think it feels like there's enough people now pushing in the right direction to try and make it happen, and it'll come.
The
So yeah.
conversations are being had. The conversations are being had. I have this conversation all the time with tons of different people. So yeah, the conversations are being had.
Yeah.
And that's where we start, you know?
Yeah. And I think we'll all be looking back when we're all living on Mars, in the colony on Mars, whatever Elon has in plan for us. And we'll go, oh, Gillian, do you remember that time in 2020 when you were having conversations about biodegradable, plastics or rubber, compostable rubber, and people were like, oh, what a stupid idea. And now look at everyone's wearing biodegradable rubber helmets. Oh, I think it's going to be interesting because we're right in the middle of this transition period. And I think there's a bunch of us, who are in the B Corp world who are trying to push the boundaries and do all this stuff. And I don't think we understand quite what is actually happening. And I think it'll only be in 20 or 30 years' time we'll look back and go, man, what a ride that was. And can you believe it took us 5 years to convince people that they shouldn't be doing this? Oh, what a crazy idea. I mean, I look back and think,
Yeah.
probably not even, well, it's getting out longer now, but maybe, what was it, in the 60s and 70s, a GP would quite often give you a prescription for cigarettes, and you look at that now and you just go, how insane is that? Like, a doctor would tell you to smoke for your health. And I just think there's a bunch of things that we're doing today that we'll look back and go, I cannot believe it took us 200
Plastic.
years. Yeah.
Plastic is going to be in that conversation, plastic and petroleum based anything is going to be in that conversation. In hopefully it doesn't take us too long to get to that space where we're like, what on earth did we do? Why did we make plastic for 60 years? That was dumb. But the conversations are being had.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll get there. Yep.
Cool. Oh, well, it's Friday afternoon.
Cool.
You probably want to go and have a glass of wine or a beer or a sherry or whatever.
Well, I live right next door to a pub, so
that's good planning.
Shout out to the Long Beach Cafe in Waikanae Beach.
Nice. Hey, look, we're looking for a sponsor for the podcast, so if they're keen, let me know.
Yeah, no, they're fantastic, and they brew their own beer and everything. They're just super cool. They've got a huge veggie out in the back that they use to make all of their food, and it's just a cool place.
You're making me want to go there right now.
Well, if you're ever passing through Kapiti,
I feel like I should try. I get to Auckland more than anywhere. It's Christchurch and Auckland. Wellington, we've got a few clients in Wellington, but yeah, I rarely go there. So I need to make the effort. I'll come up and we'll try some of the local beers and talk B Corp
absolutely.
smack. And,
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So if people want it, well, people go and buy some bloody Orba shoes. What's the website? What's the website address for people to go and buy some Orba shoes and maybe pledge for the black ones?
Orbashoes.eco.
Nice.
Orbashoes.eco. We're a .eco.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and that wasn't cheap.
You're just pushing the boundaries everywhere, aren't you? Was that from like Ecuador or something? Is that where's it? Is that what it is, or is it actually an eco?
It's eco. It's not eco. It's actually an
A thing.
eco movement. It's a thing. It's an eco domain movement.
It's not from Ecuador, because I think there's this ECU or something. Because I know some people
No.
used to do that. They used to find a country that had their, like, South Africa is .co.za and whatever. So it's like, go and find the thingy that resembles your brand. But yeah. But you see, you're just a trailblazer everywhere. It's
We
the
just
price you
joined
pay.
the dot eco, the dot eco family. Yeah.
Nice. But yes, everyone go buy some shoes. If you want some help on your environmental management system, or your environmental stuff as a B Corp, or want to be B Corp, then yeah, get in touch with Gillian at Morpham. But I mean, genuinely, you are just one of the B Corps that I'm just like, yes, you're just like nailing it. And I have no doubt global domination is coming your way. If it doesn't, it says more about humanity than you. Or you and the team.
That's great.
So,
I know you're always singing your praises, and I really, really appreciate it, because you've got a really great audience and a really growing audience. So we super, super appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't. I only support good people doing the right stuff, and you are 100% that. So, go you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, now go and get a beer.
Captain.
Hopefully, it better be a Sawmill beer. #B Corp. Just saying. And if they don't stock Sawmill beer in your pub, you need to have a conversation with them.
They brew their own beer, Tim.
All right. We'll just get one bottle of Sawmill for you every now and then.
Yeah, okay, that's what I'll do. Yeah. I used to play gigs up at the Sawmill Cafe, actually.
Oh, wow. Oh, there you go.
Back in the day.
Nice. I think we've got Mike and Kirsty coming on as guests in the near future. So
cool.
I'll get the real background on you.
That was a long time ago.
See if they remember.
Yeah. I've always been well behaved.
And on that note.
And on that note.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much. You have a great weekend. And
thanks, you too, Tim. Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have a chat.
Pleasure. Hey, it's Tim here, that B Corp bloke from Grow Good. If you want more content on purpose, B Corp, how to do more good in the world as an individual or a business, then you know the drill. Hit the like and subscribe. Check out some of our other videos. They're probably floating around here somewhere. You know how it works. Thank you so much. See you next time.